Hello, morning once again. We have 5 minutes before the afternoon. Please let's get seated so that we resume our session. Please let's get seated so that we resume our session. Please let's get seated so that we resume our session. What we're calling session 3 on decontaminating our food chain. Please let's get seated. Our colleagues online, Alejandro and Elia, can you hear us? Thank you for confirming.
We can hear you.
Yes. Okay, so we'll resume in a minute or two.
No.
Okay, testing one more time. Laptop keyboard. Charging. Standing rules and exercise. Lenovo.
No. Sound of music. I don't know.
Oh. This is what you're pulling up.
Yes, I need to
The different features going on for power.
Just as we will.
Hello? Testing, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes.
Join with my phone. Kim 11. It's not connected to my phone. Connect to Spotify. It's not connected.
Kama sioni hapa mimi. Mpaka mimi. And this already known. Yeah.
437.
Oh. Speak up. About there's a lot of bugs in this.
ready to start. Yes. Yes. I think now we are ready to start. Our colleagues online. Online. Hello? 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 Alejandro, Elia, can you hear us? 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 Alejandro, Elia, can you hear us?
Yes, with a lot of echo.
You with our program? Yes. Our third session of this AGTS and our mid-morning session for today is called Decontaminating Our Food Chain, Food Safety Innovations and Regulatory Options for Improved Food Trade. I think we have all heard about the challenges we have, particularly around aflatoxin. So we'll be looking at various solutions today to tackle this problem holistically along the entire value chain. And we'll have in front of you three presenters and two of them joining online who will be giving us their various solutions to that effect. And I'll now hand over to our chair, Dr. Amare, to take us through the rest of the...
Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, rather. I also add my voice to welcome you to the session. In this session, as already said, we'll be exploring food safety innovations and regulatory options for improvement. First of all, let me say a few words from where I come. I come from the Partnership for Aflatoxin Control in Africa, which is a program of the African Union that has been trying to introduce evidence-based, and Malawi, we left the project. It's called TANIPAC. Those of you from Tanzania might be aware of this. And in Malawi, we had a project called AMIC. So that said, as we heard yesterday, the different comments that were coming up actually are a good testimony to the importance of food safety in grain trade. Those comments are very valid. All of them are quite valid. And food safety is actually foundational to grain trade. As most of you know, the regions that dominate grain trade globally, those are regions where main food safety problems are aflatoxin in many different crops and fumonisin in maize and sorghum. So these are the main, actually, food safety problems, food safety challenges that we have to deal with, fortunately. Pesticide residues, heavy metals, you might hear about those often, but they are not a major food safety problem. Practical information on these different solution pathways. So without further ado...
Dr. Amare. Greetings, everyone from everyone. My name is Dr. Amare Se. Will you hear echo over there? The IITA AFSA team, and my colleague Jane Kamau is the. So I'm going to be talking about aflatoxin management through AFSA. Sorry, I hear. Remove about aflatoxin, sorry, and this is a fungal toxin produced by Nigeria. These pyramids in Kano, which are not happening anymore. Nigeria used to export a lot of groundnut, but since aflatoxins were discovered, most of this, or virtually all of this, has been lost. These opportunities. And of course, in the East Africa, about 3-4 months ago, we have been seeing these continuous reports about bans of trade of grains from different countries because of aflatoxin levels, as well as prohibition to sell some of the products in the markets, peanut butter and maize flour and a few other products. So aflatoxins has great importance in different sectors. But let's remember that aflatoxins are amongst the most toxic substances found in nature. There's very few compounds that have the devastating effects that aflatoxins can produce. So actually, the United Nations considers exposure to aflatoxins, which is a toxic chemical, as a serious violation to the fundamental right to life. And in summary, aflatoxin exposure seriously reduces the chances to have a normal life. So it's evident that aflatoxin control must be addressed and coordinated at a national level, but also at regional level. And going a little bit more into detail, if we take a look at the impacts of aflatoxin, they affect several objectives of most of the SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We can examine each one of these SDGs, and you will see how presence of aflatoxin has a large impact on many of them. But fortunately, there are ways to manage aflatoxins and also to positively impact or contribute to realize the different objectives in which food safety are involved with. So now, aflatoxin starts in the field. It's something that doesn't start after the harvest. There is a notion that aflatoxin may be a post-harvest problem, but it actually starts in the field because the fungus that produces the toxin commonly interacts with the crops and is present in the soil. Now, it's 10 parts per billion, but we have seen crops with more than 40,000 parts per billion. And when people consume this, people may lose their lives. But some of these Aspergillus flavus strains cannot produce aflatoxins. They occur naturally, and they may be present in the fields, maybe 5 to 20%, but they exist, and these ones can be used as biocontrol agents. Now, let's take a look at this groundnut field. I'm going to put here just a cartoon, just to show you that the majority of the fungi, I'm representing the aflatoxin producers with the red circles, the majority of the fungi is composed of fungi that can produce aflatoxins. But there are some, as I mentioned, a few of them, 5 to 20%, sometimes more, sometimes less, that actually cannot produce aflatoxins. They naturally occur, and we can use those ones as biocontrol agents. But if we don't introduce or if we do not change the population, we will have a high proportion of aflatoxin producers associated with the crop. And this will mean that there is a high probability of high aflatoxin accumulation. Now, there are many practices to manage aflatoxins. Farmers should use all of them, and also the different industries aggregating the maize and processing the maize. So it has to be a comprehensive aflatoxin management strategy, but we have found that when we employ biocontrol as a centerpiece of these aflatoxin management strategies, the contamination goes to a very low level. So biocontrol is a simple field intervention that can reduce aflatoxin contamination from the farm and until the crops are consumed. I'm going to show you how. What we do for biocontrol is that we select native strains with wide distribution and that are highly competitive to limit aflatoxin contamination. So what we do is that we select these strains, and then we make we have an industrial process in which we can produce a biocontrol product. So basically, we reproduce the spores, we coat spores in heat-kill sorghum grains, and then we combine these sorghum grains with the spore suspension using a manufacturing facility. It's a process that is very, very rapid, very efficient. There are a few manufacturers of these products. I'm going to talk about that. And then we have the final product. So this is what the biocontrol product Aflasafe is sorghum that has been coated with the beneficial strains, and we add a blue food colorant to differentiate the product from regular sorghum. And this is what actually the farmers can purchase and that they can apply in the field to protect their crops. Yes. So I'm showing here two fields, one that is representing one that is not treated and one that is treated. This lady in Kenya is treating the crop. She's using a dose of 10 kilograms per hectare of the product, and the product is applied 2 to 3 weeks before flowering. And it costs about $15 to $20 depending on the area, and also if the country has a factory. So there are different factors that Jane can talk about that. So at the end of the season, the crop that is not treated is going to contain the high proportion of the aflatoxin producers, and this is going to result most likely in high aflatoxin contamination. But the one that is treated, we have this proportion of toxigenic fungi going to the lowest to low numbers, and we have a high proportion of aflatoxin, of non-aflatoxin producers. Less aflatoxin producers means that there is going to be less chances for aflatoxin contamination. So in a way, this is the manner in which AflaSafe helps to decontaminate the soils by increasing the proportion of non-toxin producers in the field and also in the environment. Just as I mentioned, by having a single application of this biocontrol technology. So here I'm showing results of over 9,000 field trials in different countries. You will see that most of the crops here in this box, 90% of the crops contain about 4 or less than 4 parts per billion. A few of the crops contain from 5 to 20 parts per billion, and just a fraction contains more than 20 parts per billion. This depends on different factors, if the product was applied correctly, if there were conditions for sporulation of the product, and a few other conditions. But compared to the non-treated adjacent crops, we have very high levels of aflatoxin in those non-treated crops. And this is a summary at harvest, what we have seen over the years. This is a technology that has been tested since about a decade ago and now commercially available in several countries. But what we have seen is that AflaSafe treated crops contain very low levels of aflatoxin on an average, while those ones that do not have been treated have very high levels. And if we take a look into what happens when the crops are stored under poor conditions, we still have reduction in treated compared to control crops. But it's not only about the decontamination of the soils by using AflaSafe. What is going to cause low aflatoxin levels across the value chain is to have an integrated aflatoxin management system in which we employ this system in the different countries that we work. Some of the actions are responsibility of the public sector, some others responsibility of the private sector, like aggregation and post-harvest management, developing the market linkages. And there are some actions that need to be a collaboration between public and private institutes, like training for aflatoxin management and training to improve productivity and the testing of aflatoxin. So for the decontamination of the soils using AflaSafe, we need to include many other actions and many other technologies for this technology to actually work. So it's not only about AflaSafe, it's about how to make it available to farmers, how to select investors to produce the product and to make the distribution channels for the product actually reaching the farmers. So we have a whole system from product development up to where the product is actually developed and manufactured by different entities. You can see here, Tanzania and Kenya, we already have a distributor and a manufacturer. In Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda, which are other countries in East Africa, we are at the efficacy trial testing, but we hope to be with an investor selected in a few years. So it's a technology that requires a lot of research for development, but also a lot of partnerships for delivery. So some just key numbers about commercializing AflaSafe in Africa. We have 4 companies licensed to manufacture and distribute AflaSafe in 4 countries. And in one country, the government is manufacturing and distributing, but there's one company that is also doing the distribution. And we have companies distributing AflaSafe in Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Malawi, and now another one in Mozambique. There are a few factories that I'm going to show you over here. We have the one in Nigeria and in Senegal. This one in Senegal produces AflaSafe for for Mali, for the Gambia, and also for Burkina Faso. We have the one in Kenya, in Katumani, and also the one in Tanzania, which is in Arusha by a company named A to Z that is producing for Tanzania, but also for Mozambique and for Malawi at the moment. So with AflaSafe, we have been able to move a technology from the laboratory into actually being transferred to the private sector and government for them to be able to put these products into the hands of farmers, and also to develop mechanisms for farmers to obtain rewards by producing aflatoxin-safe products. So just to finalize my presentation, again, it's not only about AflaSafe, it's also about creating awareness about aflatoxin and methods to control aflatoxin. Is the use of biocontrol as a key component of an aflatoxin management system. There is a need to create and promote testing facilities. There is a need to have premiums from aflatoxin-conscious markets for startup. Public sector support, such as input supply schemes, is critical. And then there is a need to have partnerships with government institutions and industry trade bodies like EAGC. And there is a need to monitor and implement the standards in the marketplace. But more importantly, is to have a system that converges technical policies and institutional innovations for aflatoxin contamination actually to be to the lowest level from the field until the crops are consumed. We have an initiative that goes for almost 20 years, in which we have support from different partners in different countries and across continents, and we also receive support from different funding agencies and also some governments. So with this, I finish, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, or you may direct those questions to Jane in the audience. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alejandro, for that presentation. I do hope his presentation has answered many of the questions you might have about AflaSafe. So we have listened from international research on an innovation to try to mitigate aflatoxins.
Yes, next, I'm seeing that you lost my sound
from private sector
about 5 minutes ago.
From Africa Improved Foods,
and I cannot listen to Dr. Amare.
Their work on the maize cob model. So let's try, please, to get Elia online.
I've been listening to the presentation.
So as I said, Jenny is with us from IIT. She will be answering any questions.
Let us hear from Kim if
in case Alejandro might not be with us online. And while they are trying to connect Elia, let me say also from this session, it will be great if we come up with some practical next steps, some takeaways that can help us to work better as a sector to improve food safety. So I think that should be the goal of our discussions, to come up with some key messages, key takeaways that we can use to improve food safety, to do things differently as a sector, and to address the issue of food safety. I think we have Elia online, so over to him for the presentation.
Elia, can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay, I think you hadn't heard the moderator. Are you able to do your screen share?
Right away.
Or we can share it for you.
Please.
Okay, so let me share it for you.
I think I have it. Just a moment. I have it.
Okay. So you have 15 minutes at most.
Yeah, I'll try to do in less time than that. Can I start?
Yes, please.
Habari za mchana, ndugu active participant in the commodity value chains. My name is Elia Jonas. I work for a company called African Cooked Food in Rwanda. AIF Rwanda is a public-private partnership that was formed about 4 years ago, with the main shareholders being Royal USM, Dutch Development FMO, CDC, and the IFC, the investment arm of the World Bank. We were formed about 4 years ago, as I've said, and our core mission is to address malnutrition in the region. Statistics have that 4 out of 10 children in this region are stunted, and of course, with that, we get inspiration to address that challenge. Now, we do that by producing nutritious food, and our flag bearer so far is a corn, soya blend, maize, and soya. Now, when we were starting about 4 years ago, as I've said, we had a big challenge, of course, of getting maize that meet our quality standard. And the biggest challenge was aflatoxin in maize. Our requirement in a year is about 500 tons of maize. And during the first year, we were rejecting up to 90% of what farmers were bringing. Now, this we had not anticipated would be the challenge when we were starting. We'd say, okay, let us put up this nice factory. You can see in the background of my video, and of course we'll get grains from traders and small farmers. It wasn't the case. Now, with 90% rejection, we said, what can we do differently? We said the only way to address this challenge is to go direct ourselves as AIF in the value chain. Now, we did that by, of course, partnering with a number of organizations here in Rwanda, both the government and of course non-government organizations. And then what we did was to reduce the amount of time it takes for farmer to stay with maize. So we figured the longer smallholder farmers stay with maize, the more susceptible that maize is to aflatoxin contamination. And of course, Rwanda is very clean to have a season. Now, normally it would take a farmer about 6 to 10 weeks from the time they harvest to the time that maize or grain gets to the market. And you can see the illustration here from the time they harvest. Put them in the drying sheds, and then use traditional shelling mechanism. This could be hand most of the time. You do cleaning, which is of course as well very traditional. Put it out in the sun for drying, which takes about 7 days or so. Then bagging it and then transport to the market. So this whole process will take about 6 to 10 weeks. And this is where now we were, because of this longer time that farmers would stay with maize, we were rejecting maize because of aflatoxin. Now, what did we do differently? What we did differently was to introduce industrial scale shelling and drying machines. Now, in this case, we would put up in the whole country, let's say 3 or 4 what we call processing sites, whereby we will transport all the maize from the farmers to these processing sites, shelled and dried within 24 hours. So what used to take 6 to 10 weeks would now take to maximum 3 weeks. And the bigger part of these 3 weeks is, of course, harvesting and put in the drying sheds before we would go, pick it in our own truck, send it in these processing sites for drying and shelling. And then within 24 hours, after receiving this cob maize from farmers, we would convert it into grain which is fit for use. So buy maize in cob from farmers, process it ourselves, and then shelling and drying, and then take it straight away to the plant. Now, you'll see I'm demonstrating a chart here left of this slide, showing how we have improved over the past few years. Now, what used to be 90% rejection of maize has now been reduced to less than 5% during the bigger season, which is season A in Rwanda. Now, during season A, we source about 80 to 90% of our maize requirement. So you can see in a matter of 3-4 years, we've come really down in terms of rejection rate. And this is, of course, allowed us to move from what we were buying from farmers in Rwanda, about 3.5 kiloton. Last year, we did about 13,000 metric tons. And this year, we'll be doing more than 20,000 metric tons, which will be more than 70% of our needs will be coming from Rwanda's small farmers. Now, the learning from this is that as a company, you can't do it all yourself. You need partners in the value chain. And in this case, by being active participant, you as well draw attention to a number of local SMEs that want to address the aflatoxin challenges. Now, as I said, we've started with these 3 processing sites in Rwanda, but within the same time, we've seen a lot of enthusiasm from local SMEs to as well invest in the value chain. Now, investment comes in terms of silos. These are standard silos, as opposed to normal warehouses. They've started investing in dry and sharing capacity in the country. So yes, we started ourselves as AIF, but gradually we are seeing these SMEs taking up the challenge and hence, of course, address the aflatoxin challenges in the region. Now, what it means to farmers is that the 90% which was rejected from us is now being able to access premium market, which is of course the AIF market, which means more income. And again, what was the rejection would end up in the local market. And of course, contaminated food is no longer there because we're able to process that maize all ourselves. So, as I said, I'll be very quick, and this is what we have from AIF. So, COB model is really given us a lot of advantages in terms of sourcing from smallholder farmers. I'll pack it here. If there are questions or clarification, I'm going to address this. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's working. Thank you for that presentation. Elia will not be with us until the end of the session. So if we have some burning questions, a couple of them, let's take those questions now. Just focusing on this presentation on the maize cob model. It was a bit more than the maize cob model. So if you have any questions to Elia, the floor is open. Okay. Can we pass the mic there?
Elia, there's a question for you coming, so just bear with us 1 moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. It has really enlightened us. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to sit with thank you very much for the presentation. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to sit with Jane Kamau during lunchtime and had a host of questions that I'm grateful that she was able to answer some of them, including the issues about fungi in different crops. That was very helpful. So that has kind of reduced my questions about aflatoxins. To me, aflatoxins sounds like a silent killer. And even though I'm mostly in foreign service, but I'm sure that the ordinary farmers in my country, Malawi, for example, I don't know how much they are actually aware that there's this silent killer which they have to be careful about. But even when I look at the elimination, the process of elimination of aflatoxins, it's at a different level. It's at a higher level, at an industrial level. So how can it trickle down and be managed by the household farmers, by the farmers themselves at household level? Because it's only when that so happens that we'll be able to deal with this silent killer. In the absence of that, it means all those crops that are being rejected at this industrial level, from what I've heard, they are still being used. They are still being consumed by the farmers. So, until we get a simpler process of eliminating aflatoxins, I don't know if we are going to honestly deal with this problem effectively. So, and then look at the cost of, you call it Aflasef? Aflasef, the cost of it. Well, what is the cost? Maybe I didn't understand what the cost is. Is it affordable? So all these questions. So it's about awareness. It's about the cost, and it's about how we can manage the aflatoxins at household level. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ambassador, Excellency. Let's limit our questions to the presentation on the maize cob model. We'll come to discussions on AflaSafe and the other technologies after Elia leaves. Elia has to catch a flight. So let's try to use the opportunity of having him with us to answer any questions you might have on what he has presented. So maybe, Elia, you could reflect more generally on uptake of the technology you have. As more broadly, you don't have to comment on AflaSafe, but before you leave, I think Ambassador also touched on the issue of how we can make use of the technologies. So maybe you can comment on that before you leave. I don't see any other hands, so sorry, Elia, before you come in, let me also recognize Excellency here.
Hello. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, taking you back again. And sorry to present my ignorance. I was trying to read this brochure, which is coming some certain products inside here. My ignorance is coming from in Mozambique. More than half of population, they produce a lot of cassava. And even now, after eating too much cassava, it was converted as a raw material to produce beer. So I can't see here why it's not reflected on this study.
Excellency, there is a presentation later on exactly on that. So your question will be addressed by the presenter in a while. So thank you so much. We appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
So please connect Elia to comment very briefly, please, in less than 1 minute before you leave. on uptake of your technology, on how to promote uptake, scaling.
Okay, I think we have lost Elia. Maybe he's trying to reconnect, but you can proceed and then we'll bring everything. Yes.
It seems we have lost. Okay, so we'll proceed to another private sector intervention on ozone treatment technologies for aflatoxin decontamination. This presentation will be made by Pierre Hansen from iGrain Apps. So they call the technology Toxi Scrub. He's from Denmark, and you have 15 minutes. You mean the time?
Yeah, I mean the time. Yes.
The other presenters took 7-10 minutes maximum. So, but
can everybody hear me? I prefer to speak without the mic. Is that okay? No. I'll take the mic.
Can you hear me? Very good, thank you. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to speak here about the technology that we have developed at Toxi Scrub iGrain in Denmark. I look forward to do this presentation where I'll tell you a little bit about the mycotoxin challenge in general, because we're not just talking about aflatoxin here, we're talking about a lot of other food safety issues, and I'll also present our solution to eradicate mycotoxins in general and especially aflatoxin. So first, who are we? We are a Danish-based manufacturing company. We are the largest producer of grain monitoring systems in Europe. We've been the first to develop a number of things in this sector, and actually grain monitoring is the key to avoid a lot of the problems with both insects and mycotoxins. And stepping away from traditional temperature monitoring is actually one of the keys. However, that's not the scope of this presentation, so I'll not say any more about it. Then we're doing crop protection machines, chillers, nitrogen generators. We're doing a sanitation program called OSSI, where we do general sanitation, for example, for COVID-19 in spaces, and we're doing the Aussie farm where we are targeting African swine flu in pig farms and red mite problems in poultry. And finally, our Toxi Scrub, which is our latest product, which I'll present now. So already a number of speakers here have talked about the problems with mycotoxins, so I'll not go too deep into it, but of course it's a very serious problem because it affects the lives of everyday people, and therefore it should be dealt with. It's also one of the UN objectives, providing safe food for all. So what really are mycotoxins? Well, it's something that's produced, so-called secondary metabolite of various fungus species, where you have a production of some chemicals in the metabolism of the fungus spores. Probably all of you have seen funguses very frequently. For example, are eating cheese with some green stuff in it. It's all fungus, and they all tested so that they are specifically toxin-free. But most of the toxins that grow around, they can produce toxic products. Next slide.